People are calling it a TV reality Reichstag show for Trump to rescue him from his political troubles.
Let's turn to events in Los Angeles. The US President Donald Trump has ordered 700 Marines to join the National Guard on the streets of Los Angeles as protests over mass deportation policies continue. The governor of California, Gavin Newsom, says he will take legal action against the deployments. He's called Trump deranged and dictatorial. Well, let's speak to Sidney Blumenthal, journalist, former senior advisor to President Bill Clinton and to Hillary Clinton as well. Sidney, we of course have been watching the news broadcast like you. It looks like the protests have not been as violent overnight or in the last sort of 24 hours as they were over the weekend.
Well, the number of National Guard troops is twice as much on the street in the area where there are protests as there are protesters.
Mm.
It's a very isolated and relatively small area where this is taking place near downtown LA, which is, as you know, is one of the world's most sprawling and largest cities. So if you're living in LA, you basically have no idea this is going on in terms of your life. And yet, Trump, without the governor's permission, which is how the Constitution is supposed to work, has ordered National Guard troops in to quell what is a relatively small disturbance that was being handled by the 9,000 man LA police force, which is a very serious police force. And people are calling it a TV reality Reichstag show for Trump to rescue him from his political troubles. On the other hand, it may not be a distraction. It may be a test case for him to see whether he can do this sort of thing elsewhere. And some Democratic senators have raised the question of whether or not he wants to do this in advance of elections to disrupt the coming midterm elections next year.
Because it is worth reflecting on the origins of these protests, isn't it? It was a reaction to ICE or migration officials, their attempts to arrest people.
Yes. So what happened was that Stephen Miller, the deputy chief of staff, who's in charge of the immigration program and the ICE, and really in charge of the ICE program, was unhappy with the number of people who were being arrested and deported and not meeting their numbers. He called a meeting in late May of ICE officials and read them, as it were, the Riot Act and told them they'd be fired if they didn't meet his quotas. They raised the question of the legalities of what's involved, warrants, legal immigrants who are coming to courthouses for their meetings about their status and so on. And he told them simply arrest people without warrants, enter churches, enter schools, enter courthouses, just round up people and meet the numbers or you're going to be fired. And that those provocative methods are what tick this off. So the ICE agents in LA went to a Home Depot, which is a store where you get like a large hardware store, and they just started rounding people up who look Mexican, and they that provoked that community. And you got this situation. By the way, just as a footnote, these riots are by many magnitudes smaller than the riot that took place after the Los Angeles Lakers won the NBA title in 2009. So that gives you some sense in terms of um, calling out the National Guard and 7,000 Marines.
I was reading reading up on my United States Code, which gives the relative powers of the governors and the president. The president, if he wants to bring in troops like the National Guard or the Marines on the grounds of insurrection, has to issue a proclamation. I haven't seen a proclamation.
There's no proclamation under the Insurrection Act of 1807, as it were. The one insurrection we did have that could qualify was the insurrection of January 6th. And of course, Trump has pardoned all of the violent criminals involved in the destruction and the attacks on police and the deaths involved on January 6th in the invasion of the Capitol. So there, everyone knows the hypocrisy here. Um, there are
Sorry to
two
sorry to
there are
interrupt,
two
Sidney.
laws, if I can say,
Yeah,
Dominic.
go ahead. Go ahead.
One is the law that, and these are cited by the California Attorney General in his suit against the Trump administration. One is the law that the governor of the state, has to request the National Guard. There's another law called the Posse Comitatus Act, and that act forbids the use of U.S. military troops, like the Marines, domestically for law enforcement. So Trump is violating two acts according to the suit filed by the California Attorney General.
What about Gavin Newsom's role or his opportunities in this? Crises do lend themselves to opportunities as well. Do you think it might help his credentials were he considering a presidential run?
Well, he may well be, but that's a long ways away. And he may have helped himself with Democrats. He's in an unenviable situation having to cope with Trump right now, because Trump is using this to sustain his popularity among Republicans. And here's the real political uh, business going on right now, and that involves the fact that Trump's so-called big beautiful bill, wrapping up his entire program in one bill before the Congress, which is dominated by the Republicans, is in deep trouble in the Republican Senate. It's passed the House, but the Senate has a lot of questions, and they could make changes that are unacceptable to the more far right-wing House, and the whole thing could collapse. So this is a way for Trump to unite his party and apply pressure on Republican senators.
Thank you very much. Sidney Blumenthal, former Clinton advisor.
Two for the price of one. We have Marco. And I said, come on, let's go see the fake news and enjoy ourselves. Get a couple of nice questions. How are you? Who would like to ask a question?
Mr. President, on California, are you prepared to invoke the Insurrection Act?
Depends on whether or not there's an insurrection. No, but you have violent people, and we're not going to let them get away with it.
Even if you don't plan to invoke the Insurrection Act, do you plan to send troops to Los Angeles?
What?
Even if you're not planning to invoke the Insurrection Act, do you still plan to send troops?
Well, we're going to have troops everywhere. We're not going to let this happen to our country. We're not going to let our country be torn apart like it was under Biden.
What's the bar for sending Marines to
The bar
different
is
cities?
what I think it is. I mean, if we see danger to our country and to our citizens, we'll be very, very strong in terms of law and order. It's about law and order.
Sending active Marines on the table, sir. Secretary Heck
We're going to
said.
see what we need. We'll send whatever we need to make sure there's law and order.
Mr. President, do you foresee those protests spreading to other cities, Chicago, New York, for example, in the next few days?
Yes, we're going to be watching it very closely. And when they spit at people, you know, they spit. That's their new thing. They spit, and worse, you know what they throw at them, right? And when that happens, I have a little statement. They say, they spit, we hit. And I told them, nobody's going to spit on our police officers. Nobody's going to spit on our military.